Hello and welcome to Galaxy Advisors. The purpose of this video is to provide an example of how to use Condor's Fetch Mailbox menu. In essence, how do you create a virtual mirror of your email? I'm going to start off with a kind of an overview, give you the big steps of what we're going to go through. To begin with, there's a couple preparation steps. The first one is really essential. What is the name of your email host IMAP server? Might say, what is IMAP? Well, IMAP really stands for Internet Mail Access Protocol, and this enables Condor to access your email and to download specific folders to Condor for analysis. Now, some examples of an IMAP server are for Apple, imap.mail.me.com, for Gmail, imap.gmail.com, Yahoo, imap.mail.yahoo.com, and for my own university, Wayne State University, mail.wayne.edu. Now, to find your IMAP server name, you could go to google.com and do a search and put in the name, then put in IMAP server settings. That usually brings up some sort of help document that your organization has assembled or put together to identify your IMAP server settings, or in essence, contact your email support. So the very first step is really essential. You need to know your IMAP server name in order to use this example. The second preparation step is really optional, but if you want to log into your email account and create an email project inbox and outbox folders, if you don't already have those, and copy your relevant email into each folder, then you can import just those selected folders into Condor and just kind of make it project specific focus. You might just have one inbox and outbox. That's okay. Again, it's recommended if you want to do this any project focus to put those emails in those two folders, and you can select those in the mail fetcher window. So those are a couple preparation steps. If you want, you can stop here, go find your email host IMAP server. To continue, this is the Condor 3's menu at a glance. Gives you an idea of what each of the 7 menu items does. And we're going to focus on the fetch menu, the second one on the top left, specifically for email. If you click on the Fetch menu, this little drop box of options will open, and we're going to look at the very first option, Fetch Mailbox. In the Fetch Mailbox, there's really a sequence of 4 windows that I've indicated here on the right. But first, though, to use the Fetch menu, it assumes that you've already used the File menu twice. You've touched File menu to create or switch to a database, and you've created or opened a data set. Otherwise, users are going to get an error that says currently no data sets are loaded. Please load or create one first. So the overall steps when we use Fetch menu is you're, as indicated, you can have a data set ready and available to import your email into it. You're going to step 2, the email parameters, where you enter in your, in essence, the name of your email that you use when you sign in, your email password. The host, again, that host is your IMAP server name. You can leave the port settings and other check boxes we'll go through. Then once you're actually Condor signs into your email box, after it's been authenticated, then you're going to see your email folders as if you were just signed in exactly into your email by itself. You're going to pick some of those to download and import into Condor. Then finally you'll get some processing message that says how many emails it's processed, and when it's done, you're ready for analysis. So when you're done and you do a view menu, you'll have the 3 GUI controls to analyze and explore your network. You'll have the Gui Toolbar at the top. You'll have in blue here the node and edge, color, shape, and label pick menus to the right. You'll actually can use your keypad gestures to zoom in and out and explore the graph. So that's kind of the basic overall steps. A typical sequence in using Condor is this. Just again, I assume this is a new process for you, so it's helpful to have a little indication of how do you navigate these menus. And really, you navigate from left to right. You start with the File menu and go then to the right. I have a 2 there indicating that actually you touch for each Condor session twice. You use the File menu to switch or create a new database, and then open an existing data set or create a new one. You then typically, in this case, we're going to use the fetch menu to fetch a mail. And then you can immediately just say, well, what does it look like? Let's go over to the view menu, map it, visualize it. And then at that point, you might want to go back to process data set. And especially with email, people often have more than one email address. And you say, well, I'd like to merge those. So you can use the process data set to merge. You can go back, view it again, check it, go back to process data set, maybe calculate some centralities such as betweenness. And then while in your view menu, at that point, you might want to save that edited data set. You can do some screenshots for the visualizations. You can export some graphs as well. You might go back to the Analyze menu and collapse your email and say, I want to look at it by domain. Let's look at it .com, .edu, .net, and so on. And then finally, you might decide, well, I've liked this. I'd like to export it. I want to export the data as a .csv file to use in other software, or export some data set properties. And then as you might go all the way back to the file menu again and use the file to export the data set as a Condor data file for backup or sharing. Or you might say, well, let's reopen the data set and use the open data set filtering on actor or link or edge or communication frequency there again and re-examine it. So again, this is a typical sequence of how to navigate. Again, for Condor 3, there's really no programming involved, but it's important to know the rough approximate sequence that a typical user will go through and use these software with. So let's begin by an actual example now, our first example using the fetch mailbox. To begin with, we make sure to, step 1, start MySQL server. That needs to be started. The second is start Condor after MySQL is running. On step 3 on the main menu, click File and create new database. And then step 4 is to enter a database name, such as I put in Global Team, then click OK. Step 5 on the main menu, click File, Dataset, New Dataset. This is where your mail is going to be stored. So in step 6, enter a dataset name. I put in Global Team A. The important thing is to make the name short. Don't use any special characters or spaces, although the underscore can be used. Then click OK. Note, once you do that, your new dataset will appear with a green check next to it. That means that green check, it's the active dataset. And then step 7 on the main menu, click Fetch and Fetch Mailbox. Then the mail fetcher will select your new data set. Just simply click Next. In step 9, probably the most critical one, here you're just going to enter in your email name. That's the name you usually sign into your web email. Then the more important thing here is the name varies. For example, with Apple, you just put in your Apple ID name. For Gmail, you have to put in your name at gmail.com. So it does vary. So just the main thing is how do you sign in. That's how you should use this mail fetcher window. Enter your password. That's your email password. The host name, again, that's the name for your IMAP host. And my example here is imap.mail.me.com for Apple. Leave the port set at 993 and then check Fetch Content. I suggest to check Fetch Content because Condor has a number of content tools and analytics that it can perform, such as sentiment and influence and a word cloud. So that really helps to use more of the capabilities of Condor. It takes longer, but it's really worth the wait. Check SSL and then IMAP. Again, after you click Next, then wait a minute, because actually what it's doing is signing into your email box. It's being authenticated. So on the right, I have an example of one filled out with my Apple ID. I put in my password, imap.mail.me.com. I left the port as it is. I checked Fetch Content, use SSL, and then check Map and click Next. And again, thing I just want to emphasize, after you click it, wait a little bit because it's actually signing in. Next, after that happens, you click Next. After your email address and password have been authenticated by your host, a mail fetcher window opens as indicated below. In the left-hand window, select the desired folders you wish to import and click the Add button there in the middle that I've highlighted with a red arrow. then click Next. So again, if you have some particular project that you want to analyze rather than all of your email or multiple projects, in here I have Meta D inbox and Meta D outbox as I suggested in the preparation step. I'm going to add that. In the lower window, you can see those have now been added. The selected mail folders are added for importing. Then simply click Next. Step 10, the mail fetcher process window will appear and indicate its progress with a little line going back and forth. One thing, if you're importing 10,000 or more emails with content, it'll take several hours. The last time I imported 55,000 emails, it took about 5 hours. So it does take a little while. Again, it depends on your internet connection speed, processor, and so on. But if you're into 10,000s or more, it's going to take a while. On step 11, after it's done, when importing is complete, the window will close and you are now ready to use the View, Process, Data Set, Analyze, and Export menus for analysis. And you'll see, as indicated here, your file will have a green check next to it ready for viewing. So on the main menu, now let's click View, Create Static View. Let's take a look at the whole email. And so this is an example of a particular project that I had, and I used my zoom out 2 fingers on the keyboard. I zoomed out to see the entire network. At this point, you can use the GUI menus, the graph toolbar at the top, the node and edge pick menus on the right, and the keyboard hand gestures to explore the graph. Again, typically at this point, usually Condor shows you a zoom in view, so I often will take my 2 fingers and zoom out to see what the entire network looks like. So I'll go over to the right, and under node, I will label the nodes by the name to see what the names are. And then I will use a single click and hold the graph and kind of move it down. I'll move around the graph to see what the names of the people are. So at that point, that's a typical use of the GUI controls. Addition suggested next steps, especially with email and your virtual mirror. Often users have multiple email addresses. I'm sure I have like Ken Riopel at me at Gmail. There's a Facebook email account. It seems like each week or month or so I'm getting a new email address. So in essence, when you look at your email, you'd say, well, I'm in there 5-6 times because I have multiple email addresses. So at this point, Condor provides a way in which to merge those. So you can click Process, Dataset, Node Merging, Manual Merging, and that's what I suggest that you start off with. So that it has a way in which that you can select multiple email addresses which you know are the same person and merge them. So in step 15, just select under Process, Dataset, Node Merging, Manual, Node Merging. Then in step 16, the Actor Mapper window opens and 2 panels are displayed. Let's take a minute to explore this by looking at that picture of the Actor Mapper below. The left-hand window is used to merge selected names. So basically what you do is you select the names that you want to merge in the left-hand panel, and then I highlighted it in the left-hand merge, and you click the merge button down. And that makes a group of them. It tells you the number of how many people are in that group. The example here, there's 2 names I want to merge into one. Then you could actually, then on the right-hand side, it actually will show up after you merge something. And then on the right hand side, if you say, oh, I made a mistake, that's really not that, or I want to split those, you can undo that merge group by selecting that group on the right panel and clicking split, and so it breaks it apart again, or to undo it. You can actually save or for reuse these merge groups that you are creating with the file options load actor merge CSV, or a common separated variable, or save actor merge file. I recommend that you at least save it, because often you might want to come back and regroup it, or you made a mistake, and it helps you save time and to or save those merge groups that you've created. Now a tip is, you'll see I highlighted in green group size, UUID, and name at the top. it's often best just to click the name, and it'll alphabetize all those names. And it's much easier to pick them when they're very close together. So my first tip is to click the name label in each window to alphabetize the names for easier selection. Later on, you can click the group size, and moves all the groups into one area at the top. You can see who's been grouped together. And the universal UID labels, again, you can have an idea about what is their unique ID that's been assigned to it. So that's in essence for the mail merging. Is the idea is to merge the multiple email addresses which you really know are for one person. Use the window on the right to create those, and on the window on the right to split them if you found you've made a mistake or want to redo it. And of course, save it with an active merge file. Step 18, again, a suggested step on the main menu. Let's click Static View again to recheck the names to see if you missed any duplicate names. If so, repeat the process, dataset no merging exercise. Sometimes it takes a couple times to go back and forth to make sure if you view the graph and say, oh yeah, okay, that was an obscure name. Their name was with their first name there rather than their last name. It had some other funny alias in there. So as I found, it takes a few times to do that. In step 19, after you've done that, you might say, well, okay, I've looked at the state. Let's look at it in a dynamic or animation. So in step 19 on the main menu, click View, then create Dynamic View, which will create an animation or movie of the email exchanges over time. Condor gives you a number of units from minutes, hours, days, years, months, and weeks. I've collected weeks. You can actually select or bracket the date range here, and you can collect it with history or without, and select a length of time unit. I've chosen in here for weeks a particular time set for this particular project a couple years ago. I've chosen no history because I just want to see exactly week by week what it looked like without any kind of faded history of what was the week before. Then click Finish, and then that will actually then subset the data set and calculate it by that time unit that you've selected. Again, a typical sequence, again, it backs like this. We fetched it, we viewed it, we used process to merge the names. We've gone back and looked at it, and you can see there's a number of ways in which you can then navigate that menu. Finally, you can choose to export it or to export it as a Condor data file for a backup off-site or to another storage or sharing with others, or finally to reopen it and reset the date range for another particular piece of dates that you would like to zoom in on. Another suggested step is, again, you can come back to the GUI menus. In the dynamic view, you have the graph toolbar, node and edge pick menus, the keyboard, hand gestures to explore. But in this case, to use the process data set menu to annotate with centrality measures or calculate the sentiment or influence measures, especially if you selected your email with content and redraw the graph. Here I have an example of the dynamic view, and you can see at the very bottom there's a new set of sliders showing the frame. And a tip that I have is that you can actually very easily move one frame at a time. In this case, I selected weeks. And so a tip is use the keyboard, right and left arrow, to move one frame at a time. You have the date slider, which is kind of your animation slider that gives you the control of how to speed up and slow down. But if you click on that dot above the date slider and use your left and right arrow keys, you can move one frame at a time, which gives you great precision in looking at your animation. The Fetch Mailbox, again, you can explore. Another suggested steps here is to use, again, back to the View menu. A lot of options here, especially content options. You can also analyze your data set by collapsing the graph or by looking at terms. You can also finally use the Export menu to have a variety of choice of exporting your data set. Here's an example in the View menu. I've used it to create a word cloud over time. You can use the word cloud menus in the upper right hand to create or to set some parameters of the number of words to display, the minimum frequency. Then you use the slider at the bottom to say, well, how has the words changed? This is particularly helpful when I've looked at innovations, have a particular innovation name or word or a phrase that I'm looking for, and watch to see how that is changing over time. You can use the View menu to create activity over time or sentiment over time. In the top right here, I have sentiment and activity over time, showing sentiment, emotionality, activity, and complexity, 4 different graphs. I can actually create a scatter plot here, and those familiar with the scatter plot, an active scatter plot is at the x-axis is the total number of messages here sent during this window period I've selected, and every red dot represents a user, and along the y-axis is a range from a +1 at the top to a -1 at the bottom. If you're at the +1, you're only sending email. At the bottom, you're only receiving. If you're around the 0 mark, you're sending and receiving. And I can see, just quickly looking at this graph, there are 3 people that are really most active. Happens to be the project manager and 2 other leads in this case, and then a number of people. And you can really see, well, how active are individual users in this particular project. Then finally, I can select with the word usage on the bottom right, select particular words and say, well, how often were they used during and over time, and makes a graph of those, as well as who was the first user to use them, who quickly adopted that use, and how frequently were those words used. So again, the View menu options give you a lot more analytics about your email data here. You could also go back again, suggested, to the File menu and use the multi-stage filtering to reanalyze, pick some start and end date, an actor or link property, a communication frequency, and then finally you can just actually select particular users that you want in or out of that map. The export data, finally, you can export the data. There's actually 2 pieces where export is possible. Clearly under the export menu item, you'll have the ability to export it as a common separate variable, time series, MySQL DOM, turn-taking dataset properties. But also, I found a very important one, is under the file export dataset, you can actually create a Condor data file, which is a unique file system for Condor. Use it as a backup, a single file, share it with others, or move to another computer. Last, in step suggested 25, if you're a member of a group, you might say, well, let's look at our email individually, but what about if we want to combine it and look as a team, and voluntarily say, let's merge our email boxes on this project together. You can then do that very easily in Condor if you export it as a Condor data file, and then import each team member's Condor data file, or CDF, into a database, and use the File Dataset Merge dataset option to merge them into a single one, and then look at, as a group of 2 or more, what does it look like. So in this case, we could have a project database with team member A, B, and C, and so on. Then we can use the file dataset to merge those datasets in email together to look at a more comprehensive picture. In summary, Condor can use to analyze your own email as a virtual mirror, a team's, a department's, or really an entire organization or company's email over time. Condor gives you really that ability to do a virtual mirror and scale it from one person to entire organization, and then really analyze the interaction and the communication interaction that is going on to help you make some strategic decisions to help recover from turnover, or to help manage turnover in your network, and have the ability to really analyze the structure, content, sentiment, and influence over time. Enjoy Condor's Fetch email